This happened about a week ago. I had only been working the night shift at the hospital for a few days, and it was getting to me. The building was old, with flickering lights and plain white walls. It felt too quiet, almost like the silence had weight. I didn't like it. I wanted to fit in, but something felt off, like I was being watched. On my third night, I heard it. Faint cries came from the pediatrics wing. I thought it was just a patient who was confused, but those cries stuck with me. The next few shifts were worse. The cries turned into whispers, and I noticed shadows moving past the nurse's station. My heart raced every time I glanced over, but no one was ever there. I felt cold all night. The air felt thicker. I told myself it was just the late hours messing with my head. I didn't want to seem paranoid in front of my coworkers. Then one night, while cleaning, I found an old patient file. It was about a child who had disappeared years ago. The details were vague, and I felt uneasy as I flipped through the pages. When I went into one of the empty rooms, I saw strange symbols on the wall. They looked like ink, almost alive, and I had a horrible feeling. Maybe it was just fatigue. My instincts told me to leave, but I couldn't look away. I went back to the break room, needing a moment to breathe. The whispers persisted, echoing in my ears. I tried to shake it off, but something was off. I felt like I was no longer truly alone. Just as I gripped the edge of the table, a voice shattered the silence. "Why did you leave us?" I froze. I turned around, expecting a coworker. The room was empty. The lights flickered, casting long shadows. My instinct was to run, but where? After that, things escalated. I wandered the empty halls, hearing children's laughter behind closed doors. Every time I stepped closer, the laughter faded. One night, it felt really cold, and I saw a figure at the end of the hallway. It looked like a girl, her hair hanging over her face. I wanted to call out, but I couldn't move. I followed her, my heart racing. She turned a corner, and I hurried after her. When I went around, she was gone. I stood in a small room filled with old medical equipment. Everything was covered in dust. I felt a chill rush over me. The whispers grew louder, circling me like a storm. Then I heard it again, clearer, "Come play with us." Panic shot through me. I should have run, but I was frozen. I felt the room darken, shadows closing in. I stumbled back, and my foot caught on something. I fell hard to the floor. Suddenly, the girl was right there, staring at me. Her eyes were hollow. I couldn't breathe. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. She reached out a hand, and I instinctively backed away. Everything blinked out. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the break room, shaken. The whispers were silent, but I knew I wasn't done. I couldn't escape the feeling of those eyes, or the question echoing in my mind, "Why did you leave us?" I still hear whispers sometimes. They haunt me, a reminder of what I can't explain. The night after I returned to the break room, I tried to act normal. I went through my shift like any other. I even chatted with some of the staff in the early hours. But my mind was still racing. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The hallway felt more sinister. Around 2 a.m., I heard the whispers again. They were faint but persistent. "Help us," they said. My hands trembled as I grabbed the nearest chart and pretended to look busy. But it was harder to focus. I glanced toward the pediatrics wing. It looked empty. The air felt thick again, like something heavy hung over me. My break came, and I decided to step outside for some fresh air. As I walked out, I noticed it was unusually quiet. The cool breeze offered no comfort. I leaned against the cold wall, taking deep breaths. That's when I spotted something on the ground. A small, worn teddy bear. It was out of place. I picked it up. The fabric was matted and old, like it had been here for years. A chill ran down my spine. It had a name stitched on the tag, Lucy. I thought about the missing child from the file and suddenly felt sick. Was this hers? I looked around, half expecting to see the little girl appear, but nothing came. When I went back inside, I felt different. The whispers were quieter now, but I could swear I heard faint giggles echoing off the walls. I quickly made my way to the nurse's station, wanting to share what I found with someone. But the station was empty. Panic crept in. Where did everyone go? I decided to head back to pediatrics. Maybe I could find someone there. The long hallway loomed before me, its lights flickering sporadically. I stepped through the double doors. The wing was dark, save for the dim exit signs casting an eerie glow. As I turned the corner, I saw something move in one of the patient rooms. My heart raced. Was this just my mind playing tricks on me again? I drew closer, and the whispers returned, louder and more urgent. Show her. I hesitated at the door. My hand trembled as I reached for the knob. I pushed it open, and the shadows seemed to shift as I stepped inside. The room was empty, but the air felt charged. That's when I saw it, a small doll sitting on the bed, its eyes fixated on me. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, panic gripping me. The laughter erupted around me, echoing off the walls. Play with us. They called, tauntingly. I pressed against the door, desperate to open it, but it wouldn't budge. I felt the girl's hollow gaze again, piercing through the barriers of time and space. Then everything went dark. I felt a presence, cold and heavy. You left us, it whispered, just above my ear. Just as quickly, the darkness vanished. I was thrown back into reality, gasping for air. I was still in the pediatrics wing, clutching the teddy bear. The air was silent now, unnervingly so. I turned back to the room, but it was empty again. I staggered out, shaking and bewildered. Questions swirled in my mind. What had just happened? And what did they mean by, "You left us"? I stumbled back into the corridor, looking for someone, anyone. I needed to know the truth before it consumed me. That's when I saw it. A shadow flitting at the edge of my vision. I followed it, even though dread coiled in my stomach. I couldn't stop. I felt compelled. Maybe I was about to find answers, or maybe it was a mistake. But I had to find out. As I moved down the corridor, following the shadow, my breath quickened. My heart pounded hard against my chest. The flickering lights overhead added to the tension, casting strange shapes on the walls. The shadow darted into a supply closet. I hesitated outside the door, my mind screaming at me to turn back. What if this was a mistake? But curiosity pushed me forward. I took a deep breath and threw the door open. The closet was dimly lit, stacked with supplies a nurse might need. Shelves were crammed with colorful boxes and medical equipment. But there was something else. In the corner, near the floor, I saw a small figure huddled and rocking back and forth. A child. I felt a mix of fear and instinct to comfort. Lucy? I whispered, the name slipping out before I could think. The figure stopped rocking and looked up at me. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't Lucy. It was a girl, with wild hair and wide, empty eyes. She wore a hospital gown too big for her tiny frame. "You shouldn't have come," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The room spun around me. My instinct was to flee, but I felt rooted to the spot, the girl's gaze holding me captive. "They're waiting for you," she said, tilting her head slightly. I took a cautious step backward, dread pooling in my stomach. "What do you mean?" I croaked, trying to steady my voice. She pointed toward the back of the closet. I turned and strained to see, but all I could make out were shadows. Then, amidst those shadows, I saw a faint flicker of light, like a small candle. "Join us," the girl whispered, her eyes widening. "They want to play." Suddenly, the air felt electric. A force seemed to push me toward the back of the closet. My instinct screamed to run, but I couldn't move. Panic rose within me. I wanted to scream, to get out, but it felt like the shadows were pulling me closer to the source of light. "Get away!" I shouted, breaking the spell, and stumbled back. I slammed the door shut, leaning against it as my heart raced. I could hear the giggles again, echoing in my mind. "Help us! Show her!" The voices melded into a chorus of tormented calls. I pressed my palms against my ears, desperate to drown them out. I needed to find someone, anyone, to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. Gathering my thoughts, I dashed out of the closet and back into the corridor, my heart hammering in my chest. As I turned the corner toward the nurse's station, I noticed a figure ahead. Relief flooded me. Maybe someone could help. I quickened my pace, but as I approached, the figure turned and faded into the shadows. I skidded to a halt. "Wait!" I called out, but they were gone, swallowed by the darkness. An icy knot formed in my stomach as the whispers returned, more intense now, wrapping around me like a coil. "You have to find her," they echoed. Just as I was about to turn back, I noticed something glittering on the floor where the figure had stood. I bent down to pick it up. It was a small bracelet, engraved with the name Lucy. Staring at it, dread washed over me again. I had to know what was happening. There were answers, and they were close. But as I looked down the dark corridor, I felt an overwhelming sense of wrongness. There was something lurking, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it had been watching me all along. I took a moment to catch my breath, clutching Lucy's bracelet in my hand. The metal felt cool against my skin, almost reassuring. I needed to find someone who could help piece this puzzle together. But every direction felt wrong. Those whispers were still trailing behind me, and the shadows seemed to thicken around every corner. I decided to head to the nurse's station. Surely someone there would have answers. I moved quickly, looking over my shoulder, half expecting the girl from the closet to appear beside me. As I turned the corner, I saw the station bathed in harsh fluorescent light, but it felt unreal. The station was empty. No nurses on duty, no cluttered charts or busy phones. Just silence. I felt my heart sink. This wasn't right. I called out. "Is anyone here?" My voice barely echoed back. I stepped closer to the desk and started rifling through the papers scattered across its surface. I needed records, something that would explain the shadowy figures, the girl, and the strange voices. My fingers brushed against an old, battered notebook. I flipped it open, scanning the pages filled with hastily scribbled notes. Most were medical, but then something caught my eye: a name, Lucy. The entry described a little girl, a patient who had vanished a year ago. The details were chilling. The last entry mentioned her being seen playing in the old wing, a part of the hospital that had been shut down. I furrowed my brow. How had I not heard about this before? I looked around the station again, hoping to find a staff member. "Hello?" I tried once more, but there was still only silence. Had they left for the night? I felt an urge to leave, but the urge to find out more outweighed my fear. I took a deep breath and headed toward the old wing. The hallways grew narrower and darker as I made my way there. The air felt heavier, as if the shadows were pressing in. With each step, the whispers returned, more frantic this time. "Help us. Help Lucy." I gripped the bracelet tightly, its familiar name grounding me. But as I reached the door to the old wing, I hesitated. A loud bang echoed from within, like something heavy had fallen. My pulse quickened. "Who's there?" I called, my voice shaking. No answer came, just the sound of my own breathing. I pushed the door open slowly, the creaking hinges sending shivers down my spine. Inside, the darkness loomed. I turned on my phone's flashlight, its weak beam slicing through the black. That's when I saw it movement in the corner. Something white glimmered in the light. My heart raced as I crept closer. When I reached it, I discovered a small, tattered doll lying on the floor, its button eyes staring up at me. And then, the whispering intensified, surrounding me like a storm. "Find her," they urged. A realization hit me hard. This wasn't just about Lucy anymore. It felt much larger, an echo of pain wrapped in shadows and lost children. I had a choice to make. I could turn back, away from whatever this was, or I could step deeper into the unknown. The choice was taken from me as the door slammed shut behind me, sealing me inside. My breath caught in my throat, dread flooding over me. Shadows began to flicker at the edges of my vision, and I realized the time for questions was over. Someone, or something, was here with me. The room felt impossibly small as I stood frozen, clutching the doll. Shadows danced closer, creeping along the walls like they were alive. The whispers had grown louder, drowning out rational thoughts. "Help us. Help Lucy." They were almost a chant now, urging me forward. My instincts screamed to escape, but curiosity held me in place. I glanced at the doll again. The tattered fabric, the missing button, something about it was hauntingly familiar. I knelt down, my palms pressed against the cold floor. "What do you want?" I whispered, half expecting a reply. Instead, the air grew heavier. A chill brushed against my neck, and I quickly stood up, shining my flashlight around the room. The walls were lined with peeling paint, and the windows were covered with grime. It was a forgotten part of the hospital, one that clearly hadn't been visited in years. Then, from the corner of my eye, I spotted something else. A door slightly ajar at the end of the room, its frame barely visible in the darkness. I hesitated, tempted to turn back, but the whispers wrapped around me like chains. I had to know what lay behind that door. As I approached, the whispers intensified. "Help her," they pleaded. I reached for the doorknob, my heart pounding in my chest. Just before I could turn it, a loud crash echoed through the hallway behind me. I jumped, whipping around to see nothing but shadow. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself and opened the door. It creaked on rusty hinges, revealing a dim room filled with dust and decay. My flashlight swept across the space, and my stomach dropped. There were more dolls scattered across the floor, all different, all broken. Their eyes seemed to follow my every move. In the center of the room, a small, ornate mirror stood. I stepped closer, mesmerized by its beauty amid the decay. But as I leaned in, the reflection wasn't my own. Instead, I saw a young girl with hollow eyes staring back. Lucy. She was reaching out, her mouth moving silently as if pleading for something just out of reach. "No!" I gasped, stumbling back. The mirror distorted, rippling like water, and her expression twisted into one of desperation. A sharp sound pierced the air, like a muffled scream, and the dolls around me began to sway, their heads turning toward the mirror. Panic surged through me as I recognized the urgency of the situation. I had to act. I couldn't stand there any longer. I turned on my heel, ready to flee, but the shadows shifted, blocking my escape. There was a presence in the room, and it felt overwhelming. "Find her," the whispers chorus echoed again, now laced with urgency and anger. I was not just an observer, I was part of this haunting, intertwined with Lucy and the shadows that called her name. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted, and I could see my breath billow in front of me. A shadow materialized in the corner, taking form a figure resembling the girl from the mirror. She stood there, silent but staring at me, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. I took a step back, heart racing. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, desperation filling my voice. The girl pointed toward the mirror, as more whispers filled the air. Help her. Break the curse. With my eyes fixed on her ghostly figure, I realized I had no choice. I needed to confront whatever darkness held Lucy captive. As I tried to regain my courage, I could hear the relentless whispers becoming a deafening roar. In that moment, I understood I had to jump into the unknown, or be lost in it forever. I took a deep breath and stepped towards the mirror, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes watching me. The girl remained still, her gaze pleading, as if she understood the risk I was about to take. I never knew what compelled me to reach out, but I found my hand brushing against the cold surface of the mirror. A shiver raced down my spine as the glass rippled beneath my fingers. Suddenly, it felt like time stood still. The room darkened, and I could hear the whispers more clearly now, a swirling echo of sorrow. Free her. Free us. Just as I was about to pull my hand back, the mirror absorbed my touch, and in an instant, I was yanked forward, as if the glass had turned to liquid. Panic gripped me, but I couldn't scream. My body was suspended, half in the world of shadows and half in reality. And then, I was inside the mirror. The room transformed. I stood in a shadowy replica of the one I had just left. The dolls were there too, but they weren't broken, they looked whole, with wide, staring eyes that begged for freedom. Above them, the ceiling stretched endlessly into darkness. That's when I noticed the girl again, Lucy, standing a few feet in front of me, her sunken eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't decipher. Help me. She gasped, her voice echoing in the void. Lucy. I called, trying to step closer, but the distance felt insurmountable. It was as if an invisible wall separated us. My heart raced with terror, and I felt the oppressive darkness close in around me. Find the key, she urged, her voice trembling. You must find the key to break the curse. The word sent a jolt through me. I needed to find whatever it was that would unlock this nightmare. But where? I looked around frantically. The dolls were now moving, their limbs twitching as if urging me to search for something among them. I rushed towards the closest doll, a porcelain figure dressed in a faded floral gown. My hands trembled as I lifted it, searching for anything that might serve as a clue. That's when I felt something sharp prick my finger. I gasped and pulled my hand back. The doll's eyes glowed for a second before returning to their vacant stare. What was that? I whispered, a wave of nausea washing over me. The dolls were coming to life, their mouths opening in a silent wail as Lucy cried out again, "Find the key. Hurry before they wake." I turned, eyes wide, and saw that the shadows were growing restless, swirling faster around the room. The existing chaos intensified, they were waking, and with them, the fear of what might happen if I failed. Then everything went dark. I felt myself being pulled back through the mirror, back to the original room, gasping for breath. The dolls were now silent and still, their former life extinguished as if the threat had passed. The shadows receded, but my heart pounded from the adrenaline of the experience. I staggered to the wall, trying to orient myself. What just happened? More whispers flooded my ears again. The key, they murmured in a chilling cadence. I grasped the doll I had been holding from the floor, realizing that I had to find the key Lucy mentioned. But where? That was my next challenge, and I could feel the darkness watching, waiting for my next move. I had to uncover the truth before it was too late. Then, without warning, I turned to leave the room, and there, in the corner of my eye, I saw a glint of metal peeking out from beneath the floorboards. I froze. Could this be the key? As I knelt to investigate, a chilling whisper curled around me. You shouldn't have come back. I knelt by the floorboards, heart pounding as I reached for that glint of metal. My fingers brushed against something cold and hard. I pulled it free, revealing an ornate key. It wasn't just any key, it looked ancient, decorated with strange symbols that pulsed faintly in the dim light. This has to be it, I whispered, adrenaline flooding through me. But then I noticed the shadows again. They crept up the walls, dark tendrils stretching toward me as if they were alive. With the key gripped tightly in my hand, I stood up. The whispers were louder now, and panic bubbled up again. You shouldn't have come back. You must leave, they warned. What do you want? I shouted, my voice trembling. Was I still imagining things? Or was this place truly haunted by something malevolent? Just then, the door creaked open slightly, revealing the dim hallway beyond. I hesitated, glancing back at the mirror. I felt a strange pull toward it, as if it beckoned me to return. But I clenched my jaw and took a step into the hall instead. I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching me from the shadows, the dolls now eerily silent as I crossed the threshold. The hallway seemed to extend endlessly, every step echoing with a soft thud against the floor. Lucy! I called into the darkness, hoping for a response. I needed guidance. But the only sound was the soft rustling of fabric behind me. I turned, but nothing was there. Sweat trickled down my back as I quickened my pace, determined to find a way to unlock whatever curse lingered in this twisted place. I passed by rooms, their doors slightly ajar, shadows dancing in the corners as if taunting me. Then I remembered Lucy told me to find the key, but to what? The more I thought about it, the more the urgency grew. Finally, I reached a door at the end of the corridor. The key in my hand felt heavier, a weight of expectation pressing down on me. I inserted the key into the lock. It turned with a deafening click. Holding my breath, I opened the door. Inside, a chilling sight met my eyes. The room was filled with mirrors, just like the one I had encountered earlier. But they were all fogged up, reflections obscured as if a heavy mist enveloped them. Lucy! I called again, stepping inside. A sudden cold breeze whipped past me, and the whispers began anew, frantic and desperate. You must choose. Choose wisely. They cried. My skin prickled. I glanced nervously at each mirror. Which one held the answer? Which one would lead me to Lucy and break the curse? I felt the pressure mounting, each second intensifying the tension around me. I took a step closer to the first mirror. My reflection stared back, but something was off. Shadows moved behind me, and a reflection in the corner caught my eye. It looked just like Lucy, her face pale and distorted. Look closer, she urged, her voice pleading. Before I could move, I felt a sharp tug on my arm and turned to find a dark figure looming behind me. It was tall, wrapped in shadows, its face unreadable. My heart raced. This was no mere illusion. Choose now or lose her forever, it growled, and the words echoed like thunder in my mind. I was running out of time, and the darkness was closing in. I couldn't breathe. The dark figure loomed closer, its presence a chilling reminder of the urgency pressing down on me. I felt trapped, like a puppet strangled by its strings. Choose. It insisted, its voice low and threatening. I turned back to the mirrors. Lucy's distorted face glared at me from one, but the others held their own eerie allure. I swept my gaze from one glass surface to another, desperate for clarity. As I moved, the whispers intensified, filling the room with a cacophony of fear and confusion. I hesitated, my hands trembling on the edge of the nearest mirror. Each reflection felt alive, pulling me in with their stories, each one a possibility, each one a risk. I could hear Lucy's voice beneath the din, urging me to pick one. I wanted to reach out, to touch the glass, but the figure behind me loomed large in my peripheral vision, its presence suffocating. Time slipped away as I shuffled closer to the mirror that felt most familiar. I saw my face distort, twisting into something monstrous. Panic clawed at me. No! I cried out, stumbling back. I needed to choose, but every option felt wrong. That's when I saw it. In the fog of one mirror, the shapes began to clarify. It wasn't just Lucy's face, it was a shadowy tableau behind her. There were ropes, chains, something binding her. My heart dropped. Whatever was happening to her required more than a simple choice. "Help me." Lucy's voice broke through as the image sharpened. "You have to set me free." Everything inside me screamed to act. I stepped forward, reaching towards Lucy's reflection. The mirror rippled as my fingers grazed the surface, and suddenly everything froze. Shadows drew back, almost as if they were afraid. "Yes." The figure behind me shrieked, its voice oscillating with rage. "Don't. You'll lose everything." Then the world shifted. The mirror flared bright, illuminating the room in a blinding flash. I felt a rush of energy, as if the very air were rearranging itself. It was a choice, but was it the right one? With resolve, I pushed harder against the mirror. "I'm coming for you," I shouted, aiming for the truth that lay just beyond. In that moment, clarity pierced the chaos, and the shadows pulled back, leaving me unscathed. But as I penetrated the surface, reality twisted. I was no longer in the room full of mirrors. Instead, I found myself standing in a dark forest, the air thick and heavy. The shadows were gone, but the sense of dread lingered, wrapping around me like a shroud. "Lucy!" I called, my voice scattering into the night. "Where are you?" A rustling came from behind a tree, and I turned. A figure emerged, not Lucy, but a dark silhouette with piercing eyes. The familiar tone whispered through the shadows. "You need to go back. It's not safe here." "What happened?" I demanded, stepping closer, my heart racing. But before I could grasp the shift in reality, the figure faded into the darkness, leaving me alone again. I was suddenly aware that the feeling of being watched was back, heavier than before. Something about the forest felt wrong. I turned around just in time to see the outlines of figures gathering in the distance, shifting and whispering among themselves. "Lucy!" I shouted again, panic rising within. But I had lost sight of her, and the shadows were closing in once more. I had made a choice, but now it felt like a mistake. I was deeper in this nightmare than ever. I had to find Lucy and fast. The thick shadows danced around me, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. I didn't know where I was, but one thing was clear, I had to keep moving. The forest felt alive, as if it were watching. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, branches snapping under my feet. "Lucy!" I called again, my voice trembling. The distance echoed back my desperation, but no answer came. I could feel the figures drawing closer, their whispers growing louder, more urgent. Panic gripped me, I didn't know what they wanted. Then I saw a faint glow ahead, flickering like a candle in the dark. It promised warmth, maybe even safety. I hesitated, glancing back at the gathering shadows. They were still, almost predatory, as if waiting for me to make a choice. I pressed on toward the light, each step fueled by the hope of finding Lucy. The closer I got, the more I could make out a clearing ahead. Could Lucy be there? I'd take any chance. As I burst through the last of the trees, the glow intensified. It was a small fire, flickering in a circle of ominous stones. The air crackled with unease. There were no people, just the fire illuminating strange symbols carved into the ground. But then, something moved in the corner of my vision. I turned sharply, my heart racing. A figure stood just at the edge of the light, not Lucy. It was a child, small and frail, with hollow eyes that seemed to absorb the surrounding darkness. "Help me," the child whispered, voice echoing a familiar plea. "They're coming." Before I could respond, the air shifted again. The shadows behind me began to swirl, gathering strength. I could hear them now, a low growl mixed with haunting laughter. Fear flooded my veins. "What do you mean, they're coming?" The child pointed beyond the flickering fire. I turned just in time to see shadows coalescing, forming into twisted shapes, shambling forward with purpose. My pulse quickened. The fire flickered weakly, as if it sensed the dread approaching. I couldn't stand there, frozen in fear. I have to find Lucy. I yelled at the child, desperate for some clarity. But before any answer came, the shadows surged forward. I lunged for the fire, its warmth my only sanctuary. Back! Stay away! I shouted, unsure if they could hear me. The tendrils of darkness danced around the flames, the sounds of their whispers merging into a haunting chorus. The child stepped back into the shadows, eyes wide with terror. "They want to let you leave," it said, voice trembling. "You can't pass." "What do you mean?" I shouted, panic rising as the shadows pressed closer still. The fire crackled, the heat burned against my skin. I could feel it slipping away, and with it, my chance at safety. Suddenly, the child reached out, fingers trembling. "Take this. It's the only way." In its hand lay a small, shining stone, shimmering like a star trapped in darkness. I felt a pull towards it, a connection that seemed almost magnetic. That's when I heard it, the roar of shadows, the sound of countless bodies shifting, ready to strike. I was left with a choice to make. I could take the stone and trust the child, or I could stand my ground and fight. Before I could decide, the shadows surged forward. I had mere seconds. The light from the fire dimmed, and everything erupted into chaos. I grabbed the stone from the child's trembling hand, its coolness electric against my skin. As soon as it touched me, a wave of energy pulsed through my body, a warmth that chased away the shadows hovering at the edge of my perception. I turned to confront the advancing darkness, heart racing. "Stay back!" I shouted, holding the stone aloft as if it were a weapon. The shadows hesitated, a ripple of fear coursing through them like a visible tremor. I could feel their resistance, as if they were testing my resolve. "Use it!" the child urged, eyes wide with desperation. "It can break the curse." With renewed determination, I closed my eyes and focused on Lucy. I poured all my thoughts into the stone, pleading for her presence. "Lucy! I'm here. I'll help you." The shadows hissed their discontent, swirling violently around me. As I opened my eyes again, I saw Lucy materializing in the midst of the darkness, her figure flickering like a dying flame. There she was, pale, ethereal, yet unmistakably present. "You found it!" she cried, her voice breaking through the cacophony. "Yes. I'll set you free," I shouted, thrusting the stone forward. The shadows recoiled, forming a wall to keep her from approaching. "Get away!" I screamed, and without thinking, I threw the stone at the nearest shadow. It struck with an explosion of light. The shadow writhed as the glow spread, illuminating the clearing in brilliance. The energy surged through the air, the whispers transforming into shrieks of anger and fear as the darkness began to dissolve. With a surge of adrenaline, I focused on Lucy. "Come on. This way." I beckoned as she moved closer, the shadows unraveling around us. But just as she reached my side, a dark tendril lashed out, enveloping her. I felt my heart plummet. "No!" I lunged forward, grabbing her hand. Together, we struggled against the tightening grip of the darkness, our combined strength faltering as shadows surged back to reclaim her. "Trust me." Lucy's voice rang clear, piercing through the chaos as she squeezed my hand. In that moment, I realized she was right, it wasn't enough for me to fight alone. Together, we raised the stone as one. "Let us go!" we shouted, a united front against the encroaching darkness. The shadows howled in fury, but our resolve pushed the light of the stone even further. The darkness began to peel away, and with it, the loss and whispers that had haunted the halls of the hospital. "Free us!" the shadows screamed as they started to fracture and fade, retreating into nothingness. The grip around Lucy released entirely. And for a moment, it was quiet. I blinked, absorbing the emptiness. The forest was gone, replaced by a bright light flooding the air, a sense of warmth over everything. I felt lighter, the weight of fear dispersing like a morning mist. Is it over? I dared to ask, turning to look for Lucy. But she had vanished, leaving only the warmth of her presence lingering behind. I stood alone in the clearing, the shadows completely dissolved, but uncertainty gnawed at me. I had freed her from the curse, but what had really happened? Questions swirled in my mind as I took a few steps back, searching for signs of the children or the remnants of their voices. But all that remained was silence. Looking down, I realized I still held the stone. It glinted in the sunlight, but there were no answers in its reflection. I could still feel the shadows lurking somewhere, perhaps waiting for another moment of weakness. I turned to leave, the weight in my chest feeling lighter, but part of me remained there, tangled in the shadows of what had transpired. What truth lay waiting in the corners of that hospital? As I stepped back into the world I knew, I couldn't shake the feeling that I might never truly escape their whispers. I still hear them sometimes, a soft echo beneath the surface of my reality. I moved on, different hospital, different city, but I wonder about Lucy and the others still lingering in the dark, and whether I'd ever walk those haunted halls again. Would the whispers ever truly cease? Sometimes I think of that night. And find myself staring at reflective surfaces, searching for glimmers of hope or maybe shadows lurking just beneath.